You're thrown into a series of these mystery games along with 456 more players and with a prize money of a little over $31 million. Yes, that's converted to dollars. But the worst case scenario is if you lose, you die. Now, how do you survive? And honestly, before talking about the strategies and ways to survive, but the show on its own did a pretty good job showing off its creative solutions to the various puzzles. But in this video, I'm gonna tell you what you should do if you're going in blind. Now, right off the bat, before you even step foot in the actual Squid Games, you might already be in serious danger. That's because the very first game some unlucky players have to face isn't even inside the main arena. It's just you, a mysterious recruiter, and a game called, let's see, YouTube doesn't like the name of that game, so let's call it the Shoot Shoot Pow Pow game. Yeah, but you know the name of the game. And I know, this game isn't actually a part of the Squid Games, but hey, it has the recruiter in there, and we all know how much people simp over that guy, and we even got the main character playing it later. How to survive the Shoot Shoot Pow Pow game. What a stupid name. Now, this might look like a game of pure luck, but nope, it's actually a psychological trap. The way rock, paper, scissors works isn't random. Humans have patterns. If someone wins a round, they are more likely to repeat the same move in the next round. If someone loses a round, their brain tells them to switch to another move. And if someone throws the same move twice in a row, the odds of them doing it again drop significantly. So, the best way to win? Be unpredictable. The more random your moves, the harder it is for the opponent to manipulate you. If you notice they just lost a round, there's a good chance they'll switch their move, so you can use that to your advantage. But if you're just playing like everyone else, falling into those same obvious patterns, you're gonna lose eventually. And once you lose, that's when things get terrifying, because now it's time for Russian roulette. The Shoot Shoot Pow, never mind. At first, this might not seem that bad. There's only one bullet in a 6-shot revolver, meaning you have an 83% chance of survival on your first shot. But here's the thing, every empty shot that passes makes the next one riskier. If the opponent goes first and survives, your odds just get worse. And if multiple rounds go by without a shot firing, now you're in some serious trouble. However, we can also see a study from the University of Tokyo found that players are most likely to throw rock first, followed by paper, and then scissors. You can use this to your advantage. Since rock is the most common opening move, starting with paper gives you the best chance of winning the first round. Use the previous strategies I talked about earlier, and you're good to go. But now we have the added struggle, and that's the rock, paper, scissors -1. Since rock, paper, scissors -1 moves so fast, a lot of the same psychological patterns apply here. The game runs at a rapid pace, meaning there's barely any time to think. But there are still ways to game the system and increase your odds of winning. First off, never, and I mean never ever, play the same move with both hands. If you throw out two of the same option, you immediately cut your odds of winning in half. Worse, if your opponent picks two different moves, you lose automatically. Next, try to spot any patterns in your opponent's choices. Humans are creatures of habit, and when forced to make decisions quickly, they tend to default to their dominant hand. That means if someone throws out two different options, they're more likely to pick the one on their dominant side. Use that knowledge against them, and at the same time, switch up which hand you pick to throw them off. If you continue this randomness with the psychological tricks from normal rock, paper, scissors, you'll have the best possible chance of winning. But even then, this game is a complete mental battlefield. Lose and you're right back in the worst place imaginable, playing gun roulette with your life on the line. Now, moving on to the actual Squid Games. Congrats, you're into the big leagues now. Now, you probably believe this game is supposed to be the easiest and simplest to survive, right? We have the main character, our boy Ji-hoon, literally being there and telling all the other players what to do. And what did he tell the players? Let's run it back. First off, he goes in front of the players and tells them to gather around and to listen to him. Duh, and the first thing he tells them is that this isn't actually a game, and if you lose, you die. He also tells them the doll is a motion detector. This alone should be enough, right? The rules even state what to do. Later into the game, we also hear Ji-hoon telling them not to be alarmed or to panic, and not to start moving or running. That's also good advice, along with covering your mouth because it's too dangerous to speak, and then lastly, to stand behind someone that's bigger than you, since the doll can't detect movements it can't see. Most of these strategies for survival are good, so good job, Ji-hoon. You're clearly worthy of being a main character. But I don't agree with one thing he said. Standing behind someone so the doll doesn't detect you moving is a pretty stupid and dangerous move. All it would take is one person making an oopsie or sabotaging the other player or player Z, just as we saw Thanos doing. So this is a no-no. However, at the latest, if you're on the smaller side, moving behind a larger player can give you some extra protection. And if you're one of the bigger players, this is a great chance to start forming alliances by helping others. Either way, this game also gives you a glimpse into people's true character, which can be valuable later on. But this all is so complicated and too much thinking, this is much more simpler than people realize. If you stay calm and avoid panicking, just like Ji-hoon said, winning this game actually isn't as difficult as it seems. According to Netflix, when they recreated the field for their reality show Squid Game: The Challenge, it measured 328 feet long, just under the length of an American football field. Even if the field in the actual Squid Game was twice that size, which, just from eyeballing it, seems unlikely, you'd still be able to cross it in just over 2 minutes by walking at an average human speed of 3.25 miles per hour. So, the best strategy? Stay calm, take your time, and just walk. Running is the worst thing you can do. You're far more likely to trip or fail to stop in time if the doll turns around suddenly. It's just not worth the risk. This one is gonna be a long one, so grab your popcorn. The next game takes a completely different approach. The six-legged marathon, where groups of 5 compete in a series of 5 mini-games. The catch? Their legs are strapped together. So, how do you assemble the best team to increase your chances of survival? Going into this, you won't have any clue what the mini-games will be, so trying to form a team based on assumed skill sets is a gamble. The games could be anything: logic puzzles, tic-tac-toe, drawing, running, heck, it can be a game of tag. That would be both entertaining and terrifying to watch. So attempting to predict the necessary skills is a waste of time. Instead, your best bet is to team up with people you trust or those who can stay level-headed under pressure. A good example of this strategy playing out successfully is seen with this team. At first glance, they don't seem particularly strong, but their trust in each other carries them through. Young-sik refuses to leave his mother behind. Jeom-ja is compassionate and looks out for others, and Young-mi specifically chooses Yeon-ju due to her bravery in the previous game. In return, Yeon-ju boosts Young-mi's confidence, helping them all succeed. Even Seon-nyu, who might seem like the odd one out, finds motivation from the team. They work together, share their strengths, and ultimately secure a win. Another example is Jun-hee refusing to pair up with Myung-ji due to personal history and relationship drama. Her feelings are understandable, but at the same time, Myung-ji is deeply invested in her survival because she's carrying his child. In a high-stakes scenario like this one, setting personal conflicts aside could be the smarter choice, as he genuinely wants her to win. So, you've got your team. But before going into the games, let's talk about the marathon aspect. Since your legs are tied together, what's the best way to move efficiently? The players in the show figure this out quickly. They count their steps out loud. This keeps them in sync, preventing falls and wasted time. Next, if you or a teammate fails at a game, don't panic. Stay composed, encourage each other, reset, and try again. If you need to move forward to grab a game piece before restarting, don't bother turning around. Walking backward will be quicker and smoother, as we see demonstrated in the show. Lastly, if your team is fortunate enough to go later, observe the earlier teams. Pay attention to what strategies work and what don't. Going later in the order gives you a major advantage. Use it wisely. I mean, it's like watching someone doing a test and you're supposed to do it right after him. But well, here at the test you fail the exam and here you actually die. So that was maybe a stupid comparison. Anyways, let's break down the individual mini-games in the six-legged marathon. First up, Dakji. You might recognize this one from Season 1, as it's the game the salesman used to recruit people. It involves 2 square papers. One is placed on the ground while the other one is thrown at it, with the goal of flipping it over. So, what's the best technique? Your instinct might be to hurl your square as hard as possible, but this can backfire. Throwing with maximum force often leads to hitting the target with just the edge or corner, which isn't effective at all. This is the same principle professional card throwers use to cut through objects, but for this game, it's the wrong approach. Instead, focus on slamming the entire face of your square onto the center of the target. This distributes the kinetic energy across a wider surface, increasing the chances of a bounce. Additionally, the full folds in the paper create small air pockets, which, when compressed, can enhance the bouncing effect. The show even demonstrates this technique when young Mi successfully flips the square by striking it flat against the target. Follow this strategy and you'll secure a win. Next, flying stone. The goal is super simple. Throw a stone to knock over another stone a few feet away without stepping over a line. This game is all about precision rather than power. Avoid overhand or underhand throws, as those are better for long distances, not accuracy. Instead, use a wrist flick, similar to throwing a playing card. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of the opposite of dakji. Positioning is key. If you miss your first throw, don't be discouraged. Instead, use it to adjust your aim. Placing your feet at specific points on the track and using the boundary line as a reference will ensure consistency between throws. The rules seem flexible, as some players win even when their stones bounce off the ground first. So, if accuracy and power are a concern, consider a low skipping throw, like skipping a stone on a lake. This allows for better control and increases the horizontal force needed to knock the target over. That's 2 out of 5 games down. Well done. Now onto Gonji. Players toss small stones into the air while picking up more stones in increasing numbers. First 1, then 2, then 3, and so on. It's a dexterity-based game, so selecting the right player is super crucial. The show demonstrates that gender-based assumptions don't always hold up. Jung-hee might seem like the natural choice, but Daeho, a former Marine with strong hand-eye coordination, is the better pick due to both his dexterity and childhood experience playing with his sisters. So, what did we learn here? Not to be sexist. I can be a former Marine and still know how to play Gonji. To make the game easier, keep the stones close together to minimize hand movement. If your team is lucky enough to go later, use the waiting time to practice with pebbles and build muscle memory. That extra preparation can make all the difference. Next up, spinning top. Players must wrap a string around a top, launch it, and make sure it lands while it's still spinning. And yes, for all of you wondering, this is basically like Beyblade. Man, I loved that show when I was a kid. Anyways, tops function based on the principle of conservation of angular momentum. Once spinning, they'll continue until an external force, like gravity or friction, stops them. The key is to get the top to land on its tip, keeping it upright. Use your dominant hand for better control, as demonstrated in the show when the frontman struggles with his non-dominant hand before switching and winning immediately. Like with flying stone, releasing the top closer to the ground increases control and reduces the chances of it wobbling and falling. This game is relatively simple, which is likely why the show had to manufacture extra tension, such as Eunyu panicking at the sight of blood or the frontman deliberately sabotaging Ji-hoon's team. Finally, we have Jeji. Players must kick a paper shuttlecock into the air 5 times, with their foot touching the ground between each hit. Many might assume that the best way to play is by kicking the Jeji with the side of their foot, as it generates more height. However, this also makes it harder to control, increasing the risk of losing balance. Instead, using the top of the foot is the smarter approach. It provides a larger surface area for consistent hits, making it easier to control the Jeji's movement. Additionally, lifting the foot straight up rather than at an angle keeps the Jeji's motion predictable. This technique is not only more effective, but also conserves energy, making the game significantly easier. And that's it. Whoa, and that was just one game. Well, they kinda cheated, since we literally had 5 games. But congratulations, you're off to the next game. How to survive Mingle. In this game, a large spinning platform in the center of the room will stop, and an announcer will call out a number. At that point, all players must quickly split into groups of that exact number and enter smaller rooms along the walls. If you fail to find a room within 30 seconds, or if your room has too many or too few players, you lose. Boom. Game over. At first glance, this game might seem like a nightmare for alliances, but this is actually where teamwork becomes a major advantage. Unlike a typical battle royale scenario, Squid Game isn't always a zero-sum game. This means multiple players can survive if they work together. Your first instinct might be to form an alliance big enough to divide evenly into any number called. But that's just not practical. In the show, the numbers called were 10, 6, 5, 3, and 2. Theoretically, the smallest fully adaptable alliance would need 60 players to cover every possible combination. But let's be real, that's impossible. However, if you ignore 10, since it was the clear outlier, the lowest common multiple of the remaining numbers is just 12. That makes things way more manageable. Now, you won't know the numbers ahead of time, but that doesn't mean alliances are useless. If you have a group of around 9 to 10 trusted players, let's say 2 2 teams from the 6-legged marathon who bonded earlier, you're already at a huge advantage. Most numbers will break down into smaller, more manageable groups. If you're slightly under or over the number, grabbing an extra player or loaning a teammate to another group is simple. In fact, this game is one of the best opportunities to build new alliances. If you help someone survive by letting them into your group, they'll likely remember that when the next game comes around. For example, if your alliance has 10 players and the announcer calls for groups of 6, your best move is to split into 2 groups of 5. Now, each group only needs 1 extra person, which is way easier than a group of 2 or 3 trying to find multiple teammates at the last second. The same applies to 4, 3, or even 8. Breaking your team into smaller, even splits gives you the highest chance of finding the remaining players you need. The only real challenge comes with larger odd numbers like 7 or 9, where some alliance members will have to break off. But if they go individually, they become the missing piece for another group. And again, it's way easier for a single person to squeeze into a room than for a half-formed group to scramble for extra members. At the end of the day, this game is all about numbers. If you divide your team strategically, stay flexible, and act fast, your chances of survival will skyrocket.